City District 1 Alderman. We'll go around the room here and do a quick roll call, starting with Joe.
Joe Eichstead, City Engineer.
Paul Vollert, Public Works Superintendent.
Madeline Palmquist, Vice Chair, District 8.
Jeff Penscover, Alderman, District 4.
Dennis Pollock, Alderman, 6th Ward.
Matt Zacher, Mayor.
And also attending via Zoom is Alderman Patrick Delaney. Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. Item 2 is review the Engineering and Street Department monthly activity report. We can kick it off with Paul.
Sounds good, thank you. The report is attached. Again, garbage and recycling continue to be relatively consistent throughout the year. The lone construction project that we had going on or have going on was the 1 Mile Creek dredging. We started that work at the beginning of the month. We're currently, most of the mass excavation, I would call it, is completed. The existing upper dam was removed and then replaced with riprap, and then a built causeway, kind of updated it because there was some erosion going on with it, and then also topsoil and seeded that with the erosion matting. Things that are left to do is removal of the different loading zones that we had in place, and then site restoration. Most of that work will have to be done in the spring because the frost got driven down quite a bit from us driving on it for those 2.5 week time period or whatever. Our street maintenance activities, we continue to work with the Parks Department and the building maintenance on various projects throughout city buildings. The biggest one there is going and updating Helen's House to make that a 4-season facility so that they can charge it out for renting. Obviously doing a fair amount of cold patching on A Street and the other highways. We constructed a privacy berm for the police department out in their training facility to better serve them. With the warm temperatures that we had, I believe it was last week, we went through and did just a quick sweeping of the highways to get rid of some of the road debris and things like that off of it to, keep a decent looking town going through for people going through. Our annual thing is assisting wastewater to flush the dead ends in the sanitary. We did complete the Christmas tree pickup. The city generated 500 trees, or put out 500 trees for us, which we collected and put them in the spot for the DNR. And they took that down to Adams Friendship, I believe, and used it for a fish habitat project that they had identified. We also had about half of our staff participate in our biannual CPR first aid, and then also added to it an EpiPen training this year, and then also forklift training. We did have multiple minor snow events and ice events where we used 329 yards of salt, 190 yards of salt sand, and then 600 gallons of brine. Our sign shop continues to work on the different work orders that we put out. We have about 490 stop and yield signs that have to be replaced this year due to the METCD's requirement to have them maintain a certain level of reflectivity. We're about halfway through that. We have 240 signs completed. We also went through and repaired our in-street pedestrian crossing signs that had been damaged from getting hit by cars and semis. Removed the holiday signs at the state highway entrances. And then we also, I believe it was last month, this committee approved the installation of school zone signs over on Cook Avenue on the north side of Woodside School. We have about half of those signs installed that we were able to install on light poles. The remainder of that will have to wait till spring when the frost comes out. Our shop just continues to be at a steady flow. No major breakdowns here in the month of January. We did start to replace the packer floor on one of the garbage trucks. Those just wear out because of the abrasiveness of the garbage. And then lastly, you may have seen on WFHR or heard on WFHR, and then also community media, but Cody Knutson, one of the street supervisor, did some work and submitted the APWA for the first time this year had award for Public Works departments in 3 different levels to submit how you manage snow and ice and those types of things. And the city of Rapids was chosen for the population, the middle grid, which was for 10,000 people to 25,000 people. And so he put a fair amount of time into it, and will go to the spring conference and receive a plaque for us. We did not get a nationwide award. We didn't get nominated for that, but just to be recognized on the state level is a pretty good deal. So kudos for him for taking the time to do that, and like I said, put a lot of effort into that. So with that, that's my report.
Thank you, Paul. Well-deserved recognition to the Public Works Department for the snow and ice removal. You guys do a great job. Any comments or questions for Paul on streets?
Thank you.
Okay, hearing none. Engineering, go ahead, Joe.
All right, thank you. Digger's hotline locates for storm sewer and sanitary sewer remain low in the month of January. We did see an uptick in degradation fees due to some breaks and several breaks resulting in degradation fees. Regards to traffic signal projects at West Grand, the final replacement of the 2 blank out signs is now complete. That should resolve our voltage issue that we were having there. And final payment was requested to the finance department today for that project. For the High and Expressway and High and Chase Street along the Expressway signal project, the intersections at High Street were finally open here January 14th. And we also completed the railroad preemption testing at the same time that final work was being done at that intersection. So that is also complete for calendar year 2025. Related to designs for 2025, nearing completion for all of our 4 major road projects. Just getting final design completed for that, permit applications in. Some of our permits have already gotten approved and sent back, but continuing to work forward on that. Regarding the 8th Street and Wood Avenue Highway Safety Improvement Grant, that project design is complete, and it was submitted for PS&E project specs and estimates to the DOT for bidding purposes, and that'll be bid out here, I believe, this spring for a 2020-2025 construction. For the rail notification predictive mobility project, that's related to the railroad as well. That environmental document is now complete and approved by the DOT, so the final paperwork and authorization to advertise for that project should be coming here in the month of February. As Paul mentioned, the 1 Mile Creek and the dredging is primarily complete. The next phase of the 1 Mile Creek project involves the repair of the lower dam. Final plans and specs are actually ready now, and so we're going to proceed with the next steps on that project. Regarding the 32nd Street Railroad crossing near Kingston Road, on January 17th, the city submitted direct testimony and exhibits for that petition for alteration. The rest of the timeline has since been updated since Wisconsin Central Limited needed additional time to review the information and have a rebuttal testimony submitted, which will now be March 3rd. In regards to the Kingston Road grade crossing and the closing of Kingston Road, I do have a meeting scheduled with CN next week to discuss that, and I will be sure to report back to the committee on the results of that discussion. And then lastly, the bridge lighting project. We've completed the training and network configuration on January 9th. We're still troubleshooting some equipment issues. We had a meeting this week as well with the contractor and the manufacturer to try to get through some of those final items. And we're continuing to work through those to resolve those issues, and then hopefully soon we'll be able to close out that project. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions? Go ahead, Jeff.
When you meet with the railroad on the Kingston Road project, would you give me a call after the meeting just to kind of let me know how that went?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, instead of waiting for a month, I guess I'd like to get a phone call, seeing as how it's in my district there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 3. Update on Alderperson Delaney's referral regarding garbage and recycling services for mobile home pickup, or mobile home parks, excuse me. Who would want to kick this off? Paul, and then Patrick, I assume you want to speak to this as well.
Sure, and if Patrick wants to go first, I have no issue with that either, but attached is the referral that was originally turned into this committee by Alderperson Delaney. I'll just read it for you quickly here. The requester obviously is Patrick, or Alderperson Delaney. The request for the referral is discuss and consider garbage and recycling services for mobile home parks. Background information is apparently Wisconsin Rapids and Times past would pick up garbage and recycling at mobile home parks, but had stopped several years ago. The park residents contend that they are being charged for these services and are not receiving them. The action that is being requested is to approve the additional garbage and recycling service for mobile home parks. That's the intent of the referral. We then met to get a better understanding. Well, I'll just kind of go through this or whatever. Attached was the referral document submitted by Alderperson Delaney in regards to providing garbage and recycling services to mobile home parks. In this background information, a resident contends that they are being charged for these services and are not receiving them. It is my opinion that the statement is true, but not completely fully. As garbage and recycling is not currently a line item on our tax bills, it is one of the many services that we provide to residents of Wisconsin Rapids based off of our city's ordinance funded by our property taxes. In the current ordinance of Chapter 7, which reflects on garbage collection, Chapter 7.05, there's a specific item under condominiums, mobile home parks, residents above businesses. And it states in there that city will not provide collective recycling service or garbage service to residential properties physically located above commercial properties, to mobile home parks, or to condominiums. This ordinance was passed January 15th of 2019. There was another ordinance that was passed dealing with garbage collection in 2016 as well, but it did not address these areas. As stated earlier, we met on December 12th of 2004. Alderperson Delaney, Mayor Zacher, Tim DeSourcy, the finance director, and myself were present. Alderperson Austin was not able to make the meeting due to a work responsibility. Just looking at my notes and maybe modifying it a little bit during our meeting, the following solutions were present. Number one, we could simply do nothing, continue to collect garbage and recycling how we have been since 2019, which was the inception of the current ordinance, and provide garbage and recycling residential properties containing 1, 2, 3, or 4 residential units. You know, the pros and the cons of this is that it would not create any additional work or cost, nor would it generate any additional revenue. The unfortunate part is it doesn't meet this resident's concern. The second thing that we could do is review the current ordinance and make changes to provide garbage and recycling collection to other properties that currently are not being provided the service. The pro and con to this would be that it would require additional time to review the current ordinance, which we would have this time because we wouldn't be able to put this into place until 2026. And this body or the alderpersons could suggest and make changes. Depending upon the suggested changes, there may be a need to purchase additional containers, both garbage and recycling, to fulfill the additional service request. The additions would likely result in an increased tipping fee, some slight increase in labor and equipment, and therefore we would need to increase our operating budgets for 2026. A con to it is that there would not be any additional revenue generated. Another option, which there's been multiple requests for additional garbage services or variable garbage services in the past, that this one here may result in the ability to provide those services. We could refund or reduce the tax levy, and it's my understanding that that would be what the cost of garbage collection was in the year 2013, is when the levy limits were put in place. A line item then would need to be added to our current property taxes, where we would then charge an annual fee to the residents that would be provided garbage and possibly recycling services. The people would then pay the actual cost that it would be to pick up their garbage, instead of it being part of the taxes. This would allow us to, on an annual basis, review those charges and then charge what our actual costs are, and then look at those fees annually. Again, the same as before, the pros and the cons of this. It could be the same service that we currently provide, and it's maintained to all of the current users, and it could also be added on to providing garbage collection to trailer parks. We could add it so that we could pick up 2 containers. There's multiple variables that we could add on to this, and the people that use that then would simply pay the fees instead of all the taxpayers paying the fee or whatever. On the backside of the attachment then, in just the years of 2022, 2023, and 2024, those are actual charges from the costs that we had spent throughout the year. So our garbage collection, and then the 2025 is simply based off of our current budget. So in 2022, from 2022 to 2025, you're looking for garbage collection as an annual fee of $94 to $110. And then the recycling, that has the variable, the bottom end and the upper end, simply because we currently receive a grant for our recycling program. And we are not 100% positive, because we have not heard back from the state as to whether or not we could still get that or not. So that fee would be anywhere from $29 to $42 for recycling if we chose to charge for that. Again, where we're at with this moving forward, things to put in play or figure out yet is what that credit would look like for a household. And then get those answers from DOA as to what is appropriate to charge for and not charge for.
Thank you, Paul. Alder Delaney, the floor is yours if you so choose.
$200,000, your neighbor's house is worth $100,000, you're about $12 a month or so. And we did talk about the trailer parks, and if that's something that you guys would like to add, that would be up to you guys and the council. And there may be a Judy Whitney in the audience if somebody would like to recognize her, if she has anything to add. Otherwise, I don't have anything to add. I think Paul did an excellent job on presenting the different options. And I guess we can, you guys decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Delaney. There is a member in the audience, but I don't believe the one that you were referring to. Go ahead, Kevin.
Kevin Fangman, 3rd Street, 710 3rd Street South. I'm in favor of the idea of having as a separate charge for multiple reasons. It gives the city the ability to increase the charge as the costs of the city increase. I think it's fiscally responsible to do that. It also gives the residents the opportunity to select a service level. You were talking about, you know, higher priced houses, you know, paying a higher fee. That's one issue. The other issue may be, especially if you have like a larger home and a lot of people in it, maybe you need 2 garbage cans and or 2 recycling cans, and therefore your pickup fee should be increased if you're doing that. Something else that I've noticed, and I've only been here a year, is the other municipalities I've been in, except for one, also had a yard waste pickup service. I'd love to see that. If you have, you know, an acre of property, which I have almost an acre of property, accumulate a lot of yard waste. And if you don't own a pickup truck, and I don't, it makes it kind of inconvenient to haul it to the recycling center, and that would be another service that the city could offer. And again, I think it would be a way to delineate a cost between the residents for the type of service that they want. Maybe they want nothing, maybe they want it all. And the city would not be tied to the tax levy to, you know, charge for that fee, because it's a separate fee, it's not a property tax. Thank you.
Anyone from committee? Questions, comments?
I guess I'm kind of curious, from a landlord's perspective, they would get hit fairly hard by this. You know, if I'm seeing this correctly, somebody that owns 10, 20 houses, suddenly they're looking at quite a big chunk that they would have to absorb. You know, I'm just wondering if I'm seeing this correctly, I guess. That's a reality, right?
Yeah, I guess there is a possibility that there would be, well, so based off of just real preliminary numbers as far as the city goes, I believe Tim had said, and Mary, you can correct me if you remember differently, that this would generate about $50,000 more annually than what is currently, or what was in that original 2013 tax levy for garbage collection, because that's obviously what our increase is. So some of that, yes, there would be an increase, because obviously those properties are being, you know, as part of the property taxes right now. I guess as a business end of things, the landlord would have to choose how they pass that on. You know, I think Patrick said, you know, the real round number was, you know, probably like $13 a month. That would be the cost for it.
I just wanted to make sure that I was seeing this clearly and hearing what I heard, yeah. Appreciate it.
So I have a concern about itemizing what our taxes are paying for on a tax bill, only because I feel like it could be a slippery slope and lead to other individuals wanting to itemize what their taxes are paying for, where before you know it, we'll have to say how much from each resident's taxes are going to the library or the Lowell Center or stormwater, curb. I know that there are certain areas in the city that aren't fully connected to our stormwater system or haven't yet gotten curb. And I could see this becoming an item that they say, well, I don't have that. So why should I have to pay to maintain all of the other infrastructure in the city? I also worry that it would open the door for people selecting services that they don't then use. Good example is the Lowell Center. I don't use that. Why should I have to pay for it? Instead of our taxes coming together and providing all of these services to all of our city residents, which I think is it's a little more convoluted way, but it also allows us to do the most with the taxes that we receive. I'm a little confused on how mobile home parks, how we can make them different if we decide to change it in the ordinance and go with option 2, how that differs from residential properties located above commercial properties, because those are also residential, and then condos or larger areas that have multiple homes. It just feels clean the way it is, where our mobile home parks, well, there is an unique property on one larger property, it is zoned and appears on the zoning map very similar to a condo complex or a other apartment complex.
So unfortunately, in 2019, Joe Terry and, you know, this committee, obviously not the people that are currently on it, spent the most time redoing the ordinance. And I think that was the kind of why, in looking at the 2016 ordinance, you know, we did provide garbage collection to commercial properties. But when we went to this automated system, we were real specific to provide a consistent level of service to our residential properties. And, you know, your statement is kind of correct, or is correct to my understanding of why they differentiated those 3 different parcel or residential properties, because it's my understanding that the trailer home, yes, they have their lot, but it is not segregated, it's not a parcel, it's part of a large parcel. Same thing with the condos. They are multiple facilities, you know, whether it be duplexes or whatever, but on one parcel, not on their own individual parcel. And, you know, we could have Steve, the assessor, come and explain that better, because I know that he was part of that. But I believe, you know, because it was always a gray area with the previous ordinance in 2016 as to the differentiation between, you know, those parcels. And so we did, you know, the resident is correct. We did provide garbage and recycling collection to those properties, and we actually had to go and pick up the garbage and recycling containers when they finally finished this ordinance. You know, I asked the question, you know, in the 5 different trailer parks that are within the city, you're looking at 400 additional stops, which is probably doable, but then we would have to go through and differentiate why we're going to provide services there and not someplace else, you know, because we have, and since 2019, there's been requests for these additional services every single year, and we've just consistently said, unfortunately, this is the ordinance, you know, and I think we're kind of getting out of that, where we're not getting questioned as much. So, again, I would support whatever. I mean, we have the room to be able to pick up some additional parcels, but who knows, there may be a residential development that's gonna come in, and I'd hate to all of a sudden have to work overtime in order to protect or to pick up the other, not to say proper, but the ones that the current ordinance reflects.
So our current trucks, when we switch to the automated, they're unable to pick up the larger commercial, I'm just gonna say sized containers.
That's correct. We
Okay.
only have the capability of picking up 96-gallon carts. We still do have a rear-loaded garbage truck, but the only reason why we have that is because we're still currently picking up from city buildings. And I would not go back to doing commercial stuff with our current setup, just because that truck is, almost day-to-day, whether or not, but we eventually will either get enough carts at our commercial buildings, being the, City Hall, the library, we have gone to put carts there, Centralia Center, we have. There's just a few of the buildings that we still have dumpsters at.
So I guess to touch on the comment from the public, if we were to remove garbage collection from the levy, would the city entertain adding additional services? Or is that something that, we would obviously have to buy equipment most likely, but I know we do some, yard waste collection. I think the way you made it sound like large item collection would probably still be something that would not be entertained by the city at this point unless we bought equipment.
It's totally up to what we want, or what you guys want to do as a committee and or the council, Just thinking back over the last 2 years, there's been a few requests for that second container because there has been a need, and so if we did go and create a line item, I guess it would be my opinion is that you could provide that service. It would simply just be whatever fee we set, for that additional can. As long as we kind of, like I say, if we have to go and if we're gonna add 400 stops, that's gonna be a matter of having to purchase additional cans. The request for 2 containers, I don't think is over 50, probably closer to 25. So there isn't gonna be any added cost to that. The added cost is simply gonna be the tipping, but if we're charging the fee, that's gonna be covered. But you could choose to go and do a, when this ordinance was originally written, I just remember being at this specific meeting. The Public Works Director, Joe Terry, had suggested that, I have a birthday party for my daughter, and that weekend I generate 5 additional bags of garbage that I can't fit into my container. I could then go down to, either here to City Hall or to the garage and pay X amount of dollars per 32-gallon garbage can or garbage bag of garbage. We give them a wire tie of a certain color and they put it on the bag. The garbage man goes up, dumps the cart, puts those 5 additional bags that I paid for in the cart and goes and dumps it. So those are like the additional onesie, twosie type fees that we could have. When we sent that to the DOA, they said, nope, you can't do that because you're already providing a service. And so you would have to credit the levy limit or the tax levy for that charge that you're going to do. It would give us the opportunity to provide a Cadillac service if we wanted. So you could go and pick up bulk items, you could go and pick up couches and chairs and things like that, or have a drop-off site at the garage, but have the fee that's associated with that for those people that need that service. Again, it could be whatever the council and the committee chooses to do. I guess my request would be not to get too carried away, because obviously, I'm at a limited staff level. I think we're 25 staff down from what we were 17 years ago, and we still have the same amount of roads to maintain and everything like that. Again, Garbage collection is a service that we provide, and it's a great service. But I would much rather spend our resources, you know, maintaining our roads to the high standard that we currently have.
Any additional questions or comments?
I guess I've got a comment. We have people in the garbage business. Harders comes to mind right off the top of my head, you know, and we would be infringing on what they have, more or less. That's how they make their living. I'm for supporting small business as much as possible, and I would really hesitate to step on anybody's toes regarding that. You know, that would be the first thought I have come to mind. These guys got new equipment. They are making a considerable investment in Wisconsin Rapids, you know, and I guess I would take that into consideration with whatever decision we come up with. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, hearing none, what are the committee's wishes?
I guess this was just more of bringing an update to you, you know, if we get all of our information and you want to take action on it next month, where we have, you know, a better hand, but if you guys feel you have a direction that you want to go and it saves some time on our end, you know, we'd appreciate that, but not necessarily looking for any action from the body tonight.
I'm in favor of eliminating option 1 of doing nothing. I'm not a big fan. I'm torn between what would be required for option 2, the potential impact that option 3 could have on everything else, and then the levy, if that changes the levy limit, if that's going to impact our budget conversations. Torn between the two at this point in time.
Okay, let's gather some more information. We'll put it on the agenda for next month. And we'll move on. Item 4, review and consider the addition of sidewalk along the east side of 8th Street South between Lakewood Lane and the existing sidewalk at the Wood Trust Bank property as part of the 2028 DOT project. Go ahead, Joe.
So this came up as part of a preliminary scoping exercise in regards to the DOT project that is coming up in the next few years. And part of it is, you know, the rest of the street's going to be improved, and, you know, just the general exercise of looking for any other deficiencies along the corridor. So this section of sidewalk that is currently missing from the south side of Wood Trust Bank along Tractor Supply south to Lakewood Lane. Technically, when Tractor Supply built originally, in accordance with the ordinance in effect at the time, and it's the same ordinance that we have today, that when that building was originally constructed, sidewalks should have been installed at that time. I'm not sure of the circumstances surrounding that, if that was looked at intentionally and considered, you know, with lack of other development around there, that perhaps it wasn't purposeful at that time to install it, or if it was forgotten, or what the real reason is why it didn't get installed with the development. But nevertheless, looking at the upcoming project and considering if the city would want to have sidewalk installed there today, certainly it's a little bit more meaningful today to install it. Does connect between, there's a bunch of residential properties along Lakewood Lane, and then, of course, existing sidewalk to the north. But it is something that we could have, see if the DOT will include in their scope of services, and that sidewalk could get installed with the rest of the street improvements. And then the financing for the sidewalk could be either special assessed back to Tractor Supply, or the city cover that cost. I'm not sure that it would be part of the DOT's expenses, although there could be some cost sharing there perhaps. But the anticipated cost for the sidewalk would be somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. So I thought we'd bring it before the committee and see, you know, given the circumstances, what the committee wishes might be.
Thank you, Joe. It's just kind of a curious thing, to, I guess, understanding if it was required to have sidewalk installed, why wasn't it installed? What checks and balances were missed to ensure that, you know, the project was done in completion? I take it you don't have any of those answers?
I don't have those answers. I can say that there's, over the course of the 16 years that I've been here, there have been maybe 2 or 3 other properties that we've come across over the course of that time that had been developed, commercial type properties that have been developed without sidewalk. It's hard to say. It's hard to say if it's something that just kind of got overlooked through the, you know, the plan review, or, you know, what the situation really was.
So regarding the plan review, do we know if sidewalk was included in the plan review?
I would suspect not. I mean,
Okay.
it would have likely been built had it been in the plan.
Okay. All right, I mean, my opinion on this is if sidewalk is gonna go in, and I think you made some valid points there that, you know, it would be useful to the residential neighborhood there to the south and to the east, and connecting up, you know, to the portion of sidewalk there along, you know, by the bank. It should be, it looks to be like should be the responsibility of the property owner. I guess it's just you know, an argument of whether or not we think that sidewalk would be useful. And I do see, it looks like there is a widened turn lane entrance there that goes into Tractor Supply. So, that sidewalk would have to actually, you know, kind of go on to private property, I would assume.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The right-of-way does get really narrow there with that turn lane. And so, you know, if the intent is, yes, let's put sidewalk in, you know, from my coordination with the DOT, it would be to see how we can incorporate it in with their project. If it becomes problematic because of their process and how they do things, you know, it is still something that the city could do outside of that project, either before or after the DOT project.
Okay. Committee?
If the sidewalk were installed at the time of initial construction, would the business have paid for that with their construction, or would that have fallen within our responsibilities as a city?
It would have been the property owner at the time. They would have paid for that installation, and then subsequent to that, the city would have been maintaining that in perpetuity.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Jeff?
I guess I would be looking at it when the DOT comes in to do the road. Let's do it all at one time a year or 2 from now. That would be kind of an uncomplicated way of looking at it. You know, we're gonna end up spending the money now or then, you know. I would be in favor of waiting until the DOT does the road. That's my initial thoughts on it.
So your opinion would be that the sidewalk should be installed? Mhm.
To add to that, I don't think it's unreasonable to, if we need to, charge that cost to the property owner, as it would have been if it were completed when initially constructed.
Okay, so we can all agree that we feel that the addition of the sidewalk would be appropriate to pursue at this point. And whether that happens with the DOT project or if the city does it after the fact, if it complicates the project too much, we feel it should go in. Okay. So Joe, is this something that we should make a motion to, or is this direction good enough for you?
I think, I mean, if you wouldn't mind making a motion, I mean, certainly if we get to, you know, where we have to pursue like special assessments, we'd have to bring that back for procedural approvals to pursue that, but a motion wouldn't hurt.
Motion to approve the additional sidewalk along the east side of A Street South between Lakewood Lane and the existing sidewalk at Wood Trust Bank property as part of the 2028 DOT project.
Does that cover what you need, Joe? And I'll second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Motion carries. Okay, on to item 5. Discuss on-street diagonal parking situations and policy items. Who wants to take this one, Joe?
I'll kick it off, and then hopefully we'll have a little time here. Paul can throw in some of his comments as well. So this is something that kind of keeps coming up every so often between Paul and I, and you know, we kind of make note of it and set it aside. But there are a series of properties. I've tried to capture all of those that we could identify, and included them in the packet, that have on-street parking. Most cases, I think they're largely dual purpose for bus pickup and drop off for students, and then also then parking for other activities. A lot of these are institutional type properties, but kind of the question that keeps arriving is that we keep arriving at is whose responsibility is it? And we really don't have a clear answer on who necessarily should be maintaining it and to what degree, and who would be responsible for reconstruction type costs in the future. And certainly as some of this stuff has continued to age, maintenance activities that we've done have primarily been out in the street, and not so much has been done in these parking areas. What complicates it a little bit further is that in most cases, the sidewalk adjacent to the parking, the on-street diagonal parking areas, is then on private property. And in some cases, even some of the street parking is on private property. And so it becomes this sort of public-private arrangement that's kind of complicated things. And so we wanted to bring it to the committee and just kind of have a discussion about it, and see perhaps, you know, if we can start to narrow down some of the discussion that we could use to develop a draft policy that we could bring back to the committee. But I think most of those are churches, schools, both private and public. There is a commercial property that we do have an example of as well. And then, of course, there are the some examples like the downtown diagonal parking, which is somewhat similar, you know, except that the adjacent property owners, they have very small parcels, hence the need for on-street parking. And conversely, these other institutional properties generally have large parcels, still not necessarily all that much off-street parking, but wanted to share those as kind of a comparison to, you know, what the other situation is. And so in that regard, I mean, I think both Paul and I are somewhat leaning towards the, you know, it's the part that's definitely part of the street, the city should be maintaining. I think there's still a question about it at such time that we get to a reconstruction where, you know, much more significant costs will be incurred, you know, how that might be or should be dealt with. But Paul, I don't know if you have anything to add to that right off the bat.
Really nothing additional. You know, the biggest thing is just trying to put something in place so that we can be consistent. You know, it doesn't happen frequently. There is some issues that really should be taken care of, you know, very soon, just because there is, you know, some of these streets, as a lot of our residential streets are, you know, 40, 50 years old, and so they're deteriorating quickly, you know, and so, like Joe has said, about every other year, we have this conversation, and we've never made a decision, which direction to go, and so just, as he said, we think we should maintain it, but want to be consistent and also have your guys' opinion as well.
Thank you. Questions, comments by committee?
Guess I'll go first. I agree that if there is diagonal parking that is within the boundaries of the parcel owner, that's theirs to maintain. Which then makes me assume that if the diagonal parking is on the street and out of their property, then it would be ours to maintain. It would also be ours to assess what happens to that if we go and do an update to the road. So I'm going to pick on 11th Street North. If we update that road and need to make it wider, we would then have the ability to remove or make the choice to remove that on-street diagonal parking. I did see one example in here where the diagonal parking was semi on the street and semi. That one's a little strange.
10th Street, so.
I'm not sure if that one should be the parcel owners or our responsibility.
And I think for the areas where we have certainly the example you just mentioned on 10th Street where some of the diagonal parking and then also sidewalk is outside of the right-of-way, you know, almost all of these, we also have sidewalk that's outside of the right-of-way or somewhat on the right-of-way line. And, you know, for those situations, I think, you know, that we'll have to deal with those kind of on an individual basis and either get a permanent easement or something through working with those properties to get that cleared up. But I think largely that can be handled outside of the, you know, the specific questions related to the on-street parking and how the city might want to proceed with that.
So are there specific examples that are maybe a little more difficult than others? Can you take us through that? Give us something that you know, is pretty cut and dry, I guess. I mean, because some of these it's kind of wishy-washy. Tell me what's your biggest heartburn out of all these examples that we have here?
I don't know if you want to talk about the snow plowing and how some of
Well,
that's
I guess the biggest thing, or not the biggest thing, but, you know, most of these are schools and churches, and, you know, I'm assuming back in the day, the schools and things like that were put in residential areas, so they had limited funds to build the schools. There were houses probably on the backside. They didn't want to go and spend or have the ability to spend the additional money at the time to purchase those homes to put in parking lots. You know, nowadays we require businesses to put in their own parking lots, and it's a extremely expensive feat. You know, for the most part, these properties, the city does not snowplow them. We plow it like it's a street, and then whoever they have comes and plows that for whatever their need. They may take the snow away from the front of the school or the church and put it down in a pile, you know, but as a city, we do go, if we get a winter, we do go and remove the snow from those locations, you know, the piles or whatever, so that they can continue to, you know, because it's for the safety of the traveling public. If we didn't, the road would become extremely narrow and you'd be able to only have one lane of traffic go through. There really, I guess, I don't remember if you said heartburn, Mr. Austin, or not. It really isn't heartburn at all about it. It's just trying to be consistent, you know, from school to school to school, so that we can also go to them and be like, hey, you know, this is on-street parking and it's a city stance, if it's what we come up with, that you're gonna maintain it because in essence, it's your parking lot that's in the city right away. It might not be how we go with it, and I'm completely fine with that. But I just wanna be consistent because I don't want to leave a hazard out there because we don't think it's our responsibility and this organization doesn't think it's their responsibility and nobody's gonna maintain it. Because then ultimately, somebody's gonna pay for it when somebody rolls an ankle or breaks an ankle or whatever, because we're getting close to those situations, you know.
Thank you. So looking at, you know, let's say 11th Street North, if we were to rework 11th Street North, repave it, you would essentially be taking everything there, including the diagonal parking, right now as it stands, or would you be saw cutting a line there to exclude the diagonal parking if we were to repave or rework that road?
So most of these parcels, picture may not do it justice, but most of these parcels, the diagonal parking is separated from the lane of traffic by a section of mountable curb. Again, it's hard to see because that pavement is so aged, so it kind of blends into the curb and gutter there. If we're just doing it as a maintenance activity, I would go through and assess it to see where's it at, what does it need, you know, whatever, and I'd base it off of the dollars that we have available. And, you know, it may be sufficient where we simply just go and do a chip seal or surface seal or something like that on it. If we choose that it's our responsibility. There are some situations though, 8th Street North at Taos School, where there is not that concrete delineation between the on-street parking and the actual travel lane. So there, more than likely, we would have to take some portion of that. You know, if we were to remove it, the joy of that 2 blocks or that block section there, 2-block section is that it's asphalt over the top of concrete. So hopefully someday in the very near future, we get the LRIP money to be able to make that one of our construction projects, get rid of that concrete and improve that street, but it's what we're dealing with right now.
I assume the striping is done by the property owner?
Most cases, yes, they're taking care of it themselves.
Do you have something?
I guess I would agree with Alderman Palmquist. If this is city property, we should take care of ours. You know, if we have to differentiate what we take care of, if that's what you're looking for as a policy, I guess I would agree. You know, if it's city property, we gotta take care of it. That's, you know, that would be my thoughts.
And I completely understand why this may or may not give you heartburn or questions throughout the year, because I am also interested and intrigued that we have gone this long without a solid policy. So thank you for managing it this long. I am fully supportive of writing a document or a policy that clarifies the questions. I have no recommendations for how exactly that's going to work. I'm not a public works superintendent or an engineer, but I trust that you will come up with something that is suitable for all of these areas and the others that may not be pictured.
I can see how this is a difficult kind of one side or the other decision, especially when you take a look at, downtown and, the parking on Second Street South and First Street North and how all the parcels there are basically utilizing it, but it's really the city's responsibility from what I can see to maintain it. And, if you do it there and you don't do it somewhere else, I can see that conundrum. But I do agree with what's being said here. I mean, if part of the on-street parking is on the parcel, then it should be the property owner's responsibility. And I don't know if we can make it that cut and dry or not, but I think that's where I would lean towards as well.
I think that certainly would be applicable to all of these situations that, that we found throughout the city, that if it's within the city's right-of-way, it's the city's to maintain, and that is consistent across the board. But yes, it does get challenging when you've got a downtown situation that services many, that on-street parking services many properties, and then whereas you have on-street parking that just services one. And that's kind of where the dilemma comes in, but the right-of-way distinction can certainly make that clear across all those properties.
So is this something that you would like us to take some action on right now? Or, I mean, I could see maybe another month to gnaw on this, to be honest with you, just to...
I think just knowing that kind of there's a general consensus on using the right-of-way as the defining line for maintenance and reconstruction purposes, that we could put a draft together and bring it back next month.
I agree completely.
Aye.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is item 6, review the referral list. Any corrections or addition to the referral list? Item 6 can remain. Otherwise, I think everything's pretty straightforward there. All right, we'll move on to item 7, set the next meeting date. Looks like it's going to be March 6th, 5 p.m. Council chambers should be available.
Yep.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, have a great evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.